I can still recall the sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows of the church that morning. It painted the room in a kaleidoscope of colors, as if the universe itself was blessing my union with Elena. My heart raced with equal parts excitement and nervousness. I was about to marry the woman I believed was my soulmate, my future, the one who made all the dark corners of my life seem brighter. Everything felt perfect, the soft hum of the choir, the faint scent of lilies in the air, and the way Elena looked as she walked down the aisle. She was breathtaking. Her white gown flowed like a river of silk, and her veil framed her face in a way that made her look ethereal, almost too beautiful to be real. Her smile, though faint, was enough to melt away any doubts or fears I had about the future. We exchanged vows, each word feeling like it was sealing our destinies together. For better or worse, in sickness and in health, I promised, my voice steady but my chest tight with emotion. She smiled at me again as she slid the ring onto my finger. For a moment, I felt invincible, like nothing in the world could tear us apart. The ceremony ended, and the guests erupted in applause. As we walked hand in hand down the aisle, Elena leaned closer, whispering, "You've made me the happiest woman alive." I believed her. God help me. I believed every word. It wasn't until we were in the bridal suite, for a brief moment of privacy before the reception, that my world began to crack. Elena had excused herself to adjust her veil in the adjoining bathroom, leaving her phone on the vanity table. I don't know what made me look at it, perhaps the faint buzz of a notification, perhaps nothing at all, but something drew my eyes to the screen. The message was still open. "I wish it was you." 5 simple words, sent to someone named Julian. My heart stopped. I felt a strange numbness wash over me, as if my brain refused to process what I was seeing. My first thought was that it must be a joke or a misunderstanding. Surely, it couldn't mean what it looked like. But then I saw the timestamp, 5 minutes before she walked down the aisle. The room seemed to close in around me. The voices of our friends and family outside, the clinking of glasses and bursts of laughter, they all faded into a dull hum. All I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. I stared at the screen, willing it to disappear, willing it to be a hallucination brought on by nerves or exhaustion. But it remained there, a digital dagger lodged in my chest. Before I could stop myself, I opened the chat. The thread was brief but damning. "Elena, I can't believe I'm doing this." "Julian, you don't have to." "Elena, it's too late now. But I wish it was you." I dropped the phone as if it burned my hand. My stomach churned, and for a moment, I thought I might be sick. "Elena," I whispered under my breath, my voice trembling, though I wasn't sure if it was with rage, heartbreak, or sheer disbelief. I heard the door to the bathroom open, and there she was, radiant and blissfully unaware of the storm raging inside me. She smiled, her eyes soft and affectionate. "Ready to meet everyone?" she asked, smoothing her dress. For a moment, I couldn't move. I felt like I was staring at a stranger, someone I thought I knew but clearly didn't. The woman who had just vowed to love me for the rest of her life had, minutes earlier, wished for someone else. "Leo," she said, tilting her head. Her voice was sweet, concerned even. "Are you okay?" "Yeah," I lied, forcing a smile. "I'm fine. Just overwhelmed, I guess." She stepped closer, placing a hand on my cheek. Her touch was warm, familiar, but it felt foreign now. "It's a big day," she said softly. "But we're in this together, okay?" I wanted to ask her then and there. I wanted to demand an explanation, to tell her I knew. But what good would it do? We were minutes away from the reception, surrounded by hundreds of people who had come to celebrate us. I couldn't bear the thought of causing a scene, of airing our dirty laundry in front of everyone. So I nodded. "Yeah, together." The reception was a blur. I smiled when I needed to, laughed at jokes I barely heard, and danced with Elena under the glow of fairy lights strung across the venue. To anyone watching, we must have looked like the perfect couple, deeply in love and ready to take on the world. Inside, I was unraveling. Every time I looked at her, I wondered what she was thinking. Was she regretting her choice, even now? Was she comparing me to him? Did she wish she were dancing with Julian instead of me? At one point during the evening, I saw her step aside to take a phone call. She didn't know I was watching, but I saw the way her face lit up when she answered. My chest tightened. Was it him? I excused myself and found a quiet corner outside, away from the music and laughter. The cool night air did little to calm me. My mind was a whirlwind of questions and doubts. But even before the plane touched down, something didn't feel right. Elena was unusually quiet during the flight. She sat by the window, staring out at the clouds, barely engaging with me beyond polite conversation. I chalked it up to exhaustion from the wedding festivities. God knows I was tired, too. But the nagging thought of that text, the one she sent minutes before walking down the aisle, kept surfacing like an itch I couldn't scratch. When we arrived at our resort, the beauty of the place momentarily distracted me. It was everything we had dreamed of: white sand beaches, turquoise waters, and a private villa tucked away in lush greenery. The staff greeted us with garlands and champagne, treating us like royalty. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to hope that the tension I felt was all in my head. Maybe Bali would be the fresh start we needed. But by the second day, the cracks in Elena's facade became impossible to ignore. She spent an unusual amount of time on her phone. At first, I didn't think much of it. Everyone checks their phone occasionally. But Elena's behavior was different. She would excuse herself to the bathroom or step out onto the villa's private balcony, phone in hand. When I asked her about it, she smiled and shrugged. Just catching up on a few messages, she'd say. Messages from who? I tried to keep my tone light, but my chest tightened as I asked. Work stuff. Sarah's handling some things for me while we're gone. It seemed plausible enough. Elena owned a small events planning business, and I knew how much she hated leaving things to chance. But the explanation didn't sit right. Not when her face lit up every time her phone buzzed, or when she'd glance at me and quickly tuck it away, as if she didn't want me to see. On our third day, we went on a snorkeling excursion, or at least, I did. Elena stayed on the boat, claiming she felt seasick. She watched me through her sunglasses, waving when I turned to look at her. But her hands were glued to her phone the entire time. Later that evening, I tried to address it. You've been really distracted, I said as we sat by the beach, watching the sunset. Is everything okay? She hesitated, her smile faltering for a split second. Of course. Why would you think otherwise? I don't know. You just seem distant. She reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. I'm sorry. I guess I'm still decompressing from the wedding. It was a lot, you know. I nodded, forcing a smile. Her explanation made sense, but it didn't explain the glances at her phone, the way she'd pull away when I tried to kiss her, or the slight edge of guilt I thought I saw in her eyes. That night, after she fell asleep, I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked her phone. It was wrong. I knew that. But the curiosity, no, the need to know, was overwhelming. The first few messages were innocent enough. A group chat with her business partners, a thread with her mom about the wedding photos. But then I saw his name. Julian. My stomach dropped as I opened the chat. Julian. Hope you're having fun. Elena. It's beautiful here. Julian. Wish I could see it with you. Elena. Me too. The timestamp on the messages made it worse. They had been sent just a few hours earlier, while I was setting up a surprise dinner for her by the pool. I closed the app and set the phone back on her bedside table, my hands trembling. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't get enough air. She was texting him on our honeymoon. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I wasn't ready to confront her, not without figuring out how deep this went. We spent the day exploring a local market, sampling street food, and buying souvenirs. At least, I did. Elena seemed distracted, her responses clipped and distant. She laughed when she was supposed to, smiled for photos, but there was a hollowness to it all. Do you want to head back to the villa? I asked after a while. Sure, she said quickly, relief washing over her face. Once we were back, she disappeared into the bathroom with her phone again. I stood in the living room, staring out at the ocean, my mind racing. Why wasn't she happy? What was she holding onto with Julian? Did she regret marrying me? That night, as we lay in bed, I tried a different approach. Elena, can I ask you something? Of course, she said, though her tone was cautious. Are you happy? She turned to me, her brow furrowed. What kind of question is that? I don't know. You just seem off, like your mind is somewhere else. She sighed, rolling onto her back. I'm sorry if I've been distant. It's just a lot to process. Marriage is a big step, you know? I know, I said softly. But I need to know if there's something you're not telling me. She hesitated, and for a moment, I thought she might confess. But then she shook her head, her smile tight. You're overthinking, Leo. Everything's fine. But everything wasn't fine. The next day, while she was at the spa, I checked her phone again. This time, I found more messages. Julian, I can't stop thinking about you. Elena, I think about you, too. I sat down, the phone shaking in my hand. It wasn't just one or two texts. It was a thread stretching back weeks, maybe months. They'd been talking before the wedding, maybe even while we were planning it. My heart ached as I read their words. Julian was charming, saying all the right things to keep her hooked. And Elena? She wasn't just responding, she was encouraging him. I miss you. I wish things were different. You'll always have a piece of my heart. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just a passing thought or a moment of doubt. This was an emotional affair, and it was happening right under my nose. When she returned from the spa, glowing and relaxed, I couldn't look at her the same way. The woman I had vowed to spend my life with, the woman I thought was my forever, was slipping away from me. And I didn't know if I could stop it. As the days went on, I tried to piece together what to do. Should I confront her? Should I let it go and hope she chose me in the end? Or was I already too late? The weight of the secret I carried began to suffocate me. But I wasn't ready to let her know that I knew. Not yet. Instead, I did what I could to hold on to the illusion of happiness, even as the reality threatened to break me apart. Julian Vance never expected to return to his hometown, much less to cross paths with Elena again. He had spent years running away, running from the small-town expectations, from the promises he wasn't ready to keep, and from the love he wasn't brave enough to claim. His ambitions had always been bigger than their college campus, their late-night study sessions, and even their whispered dreams about a future together. But now, here he was, back where it all began. Julian had built a life for himself in the city, carving out a respectable career in finance. His return to town was meant to be temporary, a brief stint to help his aging parents sell their house and move closer to him. Yet it took only one chance encounter to upend his carefully curated existence. It happened at the cafe near the old college campus. Julian had stopped in for a coffee, his mind preoccupied with logistics and deadlines, when he heard a familiar laugh. He froze, his hand halfway to his wallet, as the sound transported him back nearly a decade. And then he saw her. Elena. She hadn't changed much. Her hair was a little shorter, her style a little more polished, but her presence was unmistakable. She sat by the window, her face lit by the afternoon sun, talking animatedly to someone across the table. Julian's chest tightened as he watched her smile, the same smile that had once made him feel like he could conquer the world. For a moment, he considered walking away. It had been years since they'd spoken, and their parting had been far from amicable. But something in him refused to let go of the opportunity. Before he could talk himself out of it, Julian approached her table. Elena. She looked up, her expression shifting from surprise to recognition, and then to something unreadable. Julian. The man across from her, a coworker judging by their conversation, excused himself, leaving them alone. I can't believe it's you, Elena said, her voice tinged with disbelief. Julian slid into the empty seat, his heart pounding. It's been a long time. Their conversation was hesitant at first, full of polite questions and careful answers. He learned that she was now running her own event planning business, a dream she'd once mentioned during their college days. She was doing well, thriving even. But there was a subtle tension in her words, as though she were holding something back. When she mentioned her upcoming wedding, Julian's stomach sank. Congratulations, he said, forcing a smile. Thanks, she replied, but her eyes didn't quite meet his. They exchanged numbers before parting ways, a gesture that felt both casual and monumental. Julian told himself it was innocent, just two old friends reconnecting. But deep down, he knew better. The first text came from her. Hey, it was great seeing you today. Crazy how small the world is, right? From there, their conversation snowballed. They reminisced about college, their mutual friends, and the memories they had shared. But beneath the surface of their friendly banter was a current of unresolved emotions. Julian couldn't stop thinking about her. He told himself it was just nostalgia, a longing for simpler times. But the truth was far more complicated. Seeing Elena again had reignited something in him, something he had buried when he chose his career over her. As their texts grew more frequent, the past began to resurface. Do you ever think about what might have been? Elena asked one night. Julian stared at his phone, his heart racing. He knew he should tread carefully, that she was engaged, and this line of conversation was dangerous. But he couldn't help himself. All the time, he replied. Julian hadn't expected her to open up so much, especially with her wedding just weeks away. But the more they talked, the more he sensed her hesitation. She shared her doubts, her fears about committing to Leo, a man Julian had never met but already disliked. He's great, she said once, her tone unconvincing. Stable, reliable. The kind of guy you settle down with. Julian didn't miss the subtext. Leo was safe, predictable, and maybe not enough. Do you love him? Julian asked. Her reply came after a long pause. I want to. Those words were all Julian needed to hear. The day Elena sent the infamous text, I wish it was you. Julian's heart broke and swelled in equal measure. He felt the weight of her longing, the echo of his own regret. But there was also anger, a simmering resentment toward the man who had what Julian now realized he wanted. He couldn't help but replay their last days together in college. He had ended things abruptly, claiming he needed to focus on his career. Elena had begged him to reconsider, to find a way to balance both their relationship and his ambitions. But Julian had been too afraid, too convinced that love was a distraction he couldn't afford. Now, years later, he saw his mistake. He had spent so much time building a life that he had no one to share it with. And the one person who had ever truly understood him was about to marry someone else. Julian's feelings of entitlement began to grow. He told himself that he and Elena were soulmates, that their connection was too strong to ignore. He convinced himself that her doubts about Leo were a sign, a chance for them to rewrite their story. When Elena returned to town briefly after the honeymoon, Julian arranged to meet her. As friends, he'd said, but his intentions were anything but platonic. They met at the same cafe where they had reunited weeks earlier. Julian dressed carefully, choosing a shirt he knew she had once complimented. You look good, she said when he arrived, her smile tinged with nostalgia. You too, he replied, his voice softer than he intended. As they talked, Julian pushed the boundaries of their conversation, subtly reminding her of the life they had once planned together. He spoke of his regrets, his realization that leaving her was the worst mistake of his life. Elena listened, her expression a mix of guilt and longing. Julian, she began, but her words faltered. You don't have to say anything, he said, leaning closer. Just tell me one thing. Are you happy? Her silence spoke volumes. Julian left the cafe that day more determined than ever. He believed he deserved a second chance, that Elena deserved the love she once had with him. He ignored the fact that she was now someone else's wife, choosing instead to focus on what he saw as destiny. In his mind, this wasn't about breaking up a marriage. It was about reclaiming what should have been his all along. What Julian didn't realize, however, was that his actions were setting off a chain of events that would have consequences far beyond anything he could imagine. When you're drowning in doubt and betrayal, the instinct is to reach for something solid, something familiar, to keep you from sinking. For me, that anchor was Marcus. Marcus and I had been friends since college, the kind of bond forged over late-night study sessions, cheap beer, and shared failures. He was the first person I thought to call when I couldn't hold my suspicions inside any longer. It was a Tuesday night when I finally broke. Elena was in the living room, scrolling through her phone again, while I paced the bedroom, the weight of her deceit pressing harder on my chest with each passing day. I grabbed my phone and dialed Marcus, my hands trembling as I waited for him to pick up. Leo? What's up, man? You sound off, Marcus said, his voice laced with concern. Can you meet me at the dive? I asked, referring to the bar we frequented in our younger days. Now. It's late. Please, Marcus. I need to talk. There was a pause, then a sigh. All right. Give me 20 minutes. When Marcus walked into the dive, I was already nursing my second beer. He slid into the booth across from me, his brow furrowed as he studied my face. Okay, spill. What's going on? I hesitated, staring into my glass. Saying the words out loud felt like making them real, like admitting my marriage was teetering on the edge of collapse. But I had no choice. I think Elena's cheating on me, I blurted out. Marcus blinked, his expression shifting from confusion to shock. Wait, what? Elena? Are you serious? I nodded, then launched into the whole story. The text I saw on her phone, the messages to Julian, the distance that had grown between us during the honeymoon. Marcus listened intently, his face growing darker with each revelation. Jesus, Leo, he said when I finished. That's heavy. Have you confronted her about it? Not yet, I admitted. I don't even know where to start. What if I'm wrong? Marcus leaned back in his seat, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. From what you've told me, it doesn't sound like you're wrong. But you need proof before you do anything drastic. Proof? Like what? I already saw the messages. Yeah, but you need something concrete, something undeniable. If she's meeting up with this Julian guy, you need to know for sure. I frowned, swirling the beer in my glass. And how exactly do I do that? Follow her around like some kind of stalker? Marcus smirked. Not quite, but I might know someone who can help. A few days later, I found myself in a dimly lit office that smelled faintly of coffee and old paper. Marcus had arranged for me to meet Amelia, a private investigator he'd worked with through his job as a lawyer. Amelia was not what I expected. She was younger than I anticipated, probably in her early 30s, with sharp green eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She listened patiently as I recounted my suspicions, jotting down notes on a yellow legal pad. "So, let me get this straight," she said when I finished. "You think your wife is meeting up with this Julian guy, but you don't have any solid evidence beyond the text messages you saw?" "Exactly," I said. "I need to know the truth." Amelia nodded, tapping her pen against the pad. "All right, here's how this works. I'll start with basic surveillance, tailing her when she leaves the house, checking her phone and social media activity if you give me access. If she's meeting this guy, I'll find out." Her confidence was both reassuring and unnerving. I agreed to her terms and handed over the necessary details, feeling a strange mix of hope and dread. The waiting was the hardest part. Knowing that someone was out there, watching my wife, piecing together the truth of her actions, was both a relief and a torment. A week later, Amelia called me with her first update. "Leo, I've got something," she said, her tone brisk. She met with Julian last night at a cafe downtown. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Are you sure?" "Positive. I've got photos and timestamps to back it up. They were there for over an hour." "What were they doing?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "Talking mostly. It didn't look romantic, no touching or anything like that, but they were definitely engrossed in each other." I sank into the nearest chair, my mind racing. It wasn't just the messages. They were meeting in person. "Do you want me to keep digging?" Amelia asked. "Yes," I said without hesitation. "I need to know everything." Over the next 2 weeks, Amelia uncovered more than I ever wanted to know. Elena and Julian had met multiple times since the wedding, often under the guise of work meetings or errands. Their conversations, captured through Amelia's discreet recordings, revealed a level of emotional intimacy that made my stomach churn. "I shouldn't be doing this," Elena had said during one meeting. "Then why are you here?" Julian countered. There was a long pause before Elena replied, "Because I can't stay away." Hearing those words felt like a knife twisting in my chest. She was still choosing him, even after vowing to spend her life with me. When Amelia handed over the final report, complete with photos, recordings, and a detailed timeline of Elena's interactions with Julian, I didn't know whether to feel relieved or devastated. I had the proof I needed, but it came at the cost of any lingering hope I had for my marriage. Marcus was the first person I called after reading the report. "She's been meeting him," I said, my voice hollow. "Damn, Leo," he said softly. "I'm so sorry. I don't know what to do, Marcus. Do I confront her? Do I leave? What the hell do I do?" Marcus hesitated before replying. "You confront her, man. She owes you an explanation. And then you decide if this is something you can move past, or if it's the end of the road." The idea of confronting Elena terrified me, but I knew Marcus was right. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. The truth was out now, and there was no turning back. As I sat alone in my car that night, staring at the envelope containing Amelia's report, I realized that the next conversation I had with Elena would either save our marriage or destroy it completely. And I wasn't sure which outcome I was more afraid of. If there's one thing about betrayal, it has a way of consuming every quiet moment, filling the spaces where trust used to live. By the time Amelia handed me the damning evidence of Elena's meetings with Julian, I had become a master of concealment. I went through my days like an actor reciting lines, playing the part of the devoted husband while inside. I was unraveling. Elena, on the other hand, seemed oblivious, or at least that's what I thought until Chloe showed up. Chloe had always been a constant presence in Elena's life. She was loud, opinionated, and fiercely protective of her best friend. I tolerated her because I had to, though her judgmental glances and passive-aggressive comments often tested my patience. One Saturday afternoon, as Elena was preparing for one of her newly frequent dinner parties, Chloe arrived unannounced. I was in the kitchen, nursing a cup of coffee, when I heard the door open and her familiar voice fill the house. "Leo," she called out, her tone overly sweet. I turned to see her walking in, sunglasses perched on her head, a bottle of wine in hand. "Chloe," I greeted with a nod. "Didn't know you were coming by." "Well, Elena didn't mention it, but I thought I'd drop in and help out. You know how she is, always trying to do everything herself." I forced a smile, though her sudden appearance put me on edge. She's in the living room. Chloe gave me a long, scrutinizing look before heading to find Elena. I stayed in the kitchen, listening to their muffled conversation. But it wasn't long before Chloe's voice cut through the air, sharper now. "Are you sure everything's okay with Leo?" she asked. My heart skipped a beat. "Of course," Elena replied, though her tone lacked conviction. "Why would you ask that?" "He seems off," Chloe said. "Like he knows something he's not saying." There was a pause, and I imagined Elena shifting uncomfortably. "You're imagining things. He's fine." "Are you sure?" Chloe pressed. "Because if he suspects anything—" "I told you, everything's fine," Elena interrupted, her voice rising slightly. "Just drop it, okay?" I walked away before I could hear more, my stomach churning. So, Chloe knew. Of course she did. Elena confided in her about everything. The realization made my blood boil. Not only was my wife deceiving me, but she had roped her best friend into the lie as well. That evening, the dinner party unfolded like a scene from a picture-perfect marriage. Elena was the epitome of charm, laughing with our guests, holding my hand, and planting kisses on my cheek as if nothing was wrong. I played along, smiling and nodding, though every touch from her felt like a betrayal. She had started doing this more often, hosting dinners, posting curated photos of us on social media, and weaving a narrative of bliss for the world to see. "Smile, Leo," she said as she held her phone up for a selfie. Her face was alight with an enthusiasm that felt rehearsed, her eyes darting to mine as if daring me to play my role. I smiled, though it felt more like a grimace, and she posted the photo with a caption that made my stomach turn. "Grateful for moments like these with the love of my life. #blessed, #happy wife apilophy life." The likes and comments flooded in almost immediately. Friends and family gushed about how perfect we looked, how lucky we were to have each other. I wanted to scream at the hypocrisy of it all. Later that night, as the last guest left and I began cleaning up the remnants of the evening, Elena approached me. "Did you have fun tonight?" she asked, her voice tentative. "Sure," I said without looking at her. She sighed, stepping closer. "Leo, if something's bothering you, you can tell me." I glanced at her, studying her face. Was she genuinely concerned? Or was this just another act? "I'm fine," I said after a moment, my voice flat. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and for a brief second, I thought she might push further. But then she nodded and turned away, retreating to our bedroom. Over the next few weeks, the facade grew even more elaborate. Elena began planning outings, picnics, movie nights, even a weekend getaway, all meticulously documented on her phone for the world to see. She seemed determined to prove to everyone, including herself, that our marriage was flawless. But behind closed doors, the cracks were impossible to ignore. She avoided my gaze when she thought I wasn't looking. Her touches, though frequent, felt hollow, like she was checking off a box on a to-do list. And the late-night phone checks continued, though she was more careful now, locking her screen whenever I was nearby. One evening, after another carefully staged dinner, I found myself staring at one of her Instagram posts. The photo was of us laughing together, her head tilted toward mine, a perfect snapshot of marital bliss. The caption read, "In a world full of chaos, he's my safe place and forever love." The comments poured in, each one more nauseating than the last. "You two are goals. Perfect couple alert. Love like this is so rare. Cherish it." I tossed my phone onto the couch, the bitterness rising in my throat. How could she stand there, smiling and lying to everyone, while knowing what she had done? The only solace I found during those weeks came from Marcus and Amelia. Marcus checked in regularly, always ready with a beer and a listening ear. "How's the circus?" he asked one night as we sat on his porch. "Exhausting," I admitted. "She's putting on this show, trying to convince everyone we're the perfect couple. And you're just playing along?" I nodded, sipping my drink. "For now. But it's wearing me down, Marcus. Every time she posts another picture or smiles for the camera, it feels like a slap in the face." "You can't keep this up forever," he said. "At some point, you're going to have to confront her." "I know," I said, though the thought filled me with dread. Amelia was more pragmatic. During one of our meetings, she handed me a file containing more evidence of Elena's meetings with Julian. "She's still seeing him," Amelia said, her tone matter-of-fact. "Not as frequently, but it's happening." I flipped through the photos, my heart sinking further with each one. There they were, sitting in a park, sharing coffee at a cafe, walking side by side down a quiet street. "She's trying to keep up appearances, but the truth always finds a way out," Amelia said. I nodded, closing the file. "Thank you." Amelia, I don't know what I'd do without you. She smiled faintly. Just be careful, Leo. Whatever you decide to do, make sure it's what's best for you. By the time Elena hosted yet another dinner, I was running on fumes. My patience was wearing thin, and the weight of her lies was suffocating me. As she laughed and clinked glasses with our guests, I watched her from across the room, my mind racing. How much longer could I endure this charade? How much longer could I keep pretending to be the husband she wanted the world to see? When the night finally ended and the house was quiet again, Elena turned to me with a soft smile. Thank you for being so amazing tonight, she said, placing a hand on my chest. I looked at her, searching for any trace of the woman I had married, the woman I thought I knew. But all I saw was someone I no longer recognized. You're welcome, I said, my voice void of emotion. As she turned and walked toward the bedroom, I stayed behind, staring at the remnants of the evening. The empty glasses, the discarded napkins, the lingering scent of her perfume. All of it felt like a monument to a marriage that had become nothing more than an illusion. And for the first time, I began to wonder if it was even worth trying to save. If there's one person I can always count on to read between the lines, it's my mother, Eleanor. She has a way of seeing through facades, peeling back the layers to uncover the truth, even when you don't want her to. So, when she showed up for Sunday dinner a week after one of Elena's picture-perfect dinner parties, I knew she had something on her mind. Eleanor had never been shy about her reservations when it came to Elena. She wasn't cruel about it. My mother wasn't the meddling type. But her skepticism had always been there, lurking behind polite smiles and carefully chosen words. As we sat at the dining table with Elena bustling around the kitchen and her sister, Ava, chatting about her latest work project, Eleanor watched me. Not Elena, not Ava. Me. You look tired, she said, her voice gentle but probing. I'm fine, I replied quickly, avoiding her gaze. She didn't press the issue, but her silence spoke volumes. Eleanor never needed to ask outright. She let her observations do the talking. Later that evening, after Elena and Ava had excused themselves to the kitchen, Eleanor cornered me in the living room. Leo, she began, her tone low but firm. What's going on with you two? I hesitated, knowing that once I opened the door to this conversation, there would be no going back. Mom, it's nothing. We're just adjusting to married life. Eleanor raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. Adjusting? I've known you your whole life, Leo. Something's off. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. It's complicated. Does it have to be? She pressed. Look, I'm not saying I was right about Elena, but if there's trouble, you need to face it. Don't waste years trying to fix something that can't be fixed. Her words hit harder than I expected. She wasn't outright saying I should leave Elena, but her implication was clear. Think carefully about whether this marriage was worth saving. The bombshell came later that night, courtesy of Ava. We were cleaning up after dinner when she casually mentioned Julian. You know, she said, rinsing a plate, Elena always had a thing for him. She used to talk about how he was her, one that got away. Even before the wedding, she'd get all dreamy-eyed when his name came up. I froze, gripping the dish towel in my hand. What do you mean, before the wedding? Ava glanced at me, her eyes widening slightly. Oh, nothing serious. Just, you know how people get nostalgic about old flames. The words rang in my ears long after Ava left. Nostalgia? No, this was more than that. This was evidence, confirmation of what I'd suspected all along. Elena's heart was still tethered to Julian, even as she pretended to commit to me. That night, as I lay beside her in bed, Eleanor's advice echoed in my mind. Don't waste years trying to fix something that can't be fixed. For the first time, I began to wonder if my mother was right. Julian Vance sat in his dimly lit apartment, his foot tapping incessantly against the hardwood floor. His phone was on the coffee table in front of him, the last message from Elena staring back at him like a taunt. I need more time. Time. That's all she ever seemed to ask for. Weeks had passed since their first meeting after her wedding, and Julian's patience was wearing thin. He had left this town years ago because he was too scared to commit, too focused on his career. But now, older and supposedly wiser, he wasn't willing to wait. Not anymore. He picked up his phone and reread their conversation for the 100th time. Julian, I can't keep doing this. Elena, please don't say that. I need to think. You've been thinking for weeks. You can't have it both ways. His jaw clenched as he set the phone down. He hated the desperation that had crept into his tone, but he couldn't help it. Seeing her again had reignited everything he buried years ago. The love, the connection, the belief that she was his soulmate. But now she was married to Leo. The thought of Leo sent a wave of anger coursing through him. Julian had done his research. Leo was solid, reliable, predictable, everything Julian wasn't. And yet, Julian knew deep down that Elena didn't feel the same way about Leo as she did about him. She had admitted as much in their conversations. I miss you. I don't know what I'm doing. You still have my heart. If those words were true, then why was she still hesitating? Julian stood abruptly, pacing the length of his living room. He needed to take control of the situation. He needed her to make a decision, one way or another. The next morning, Julian called Elena. She picked up on the third ring, her voice cautious. Julian, I can't talk right now. You need to make time, he said, his tone sharper than he intended. We need to talk. Now. She sighed. Fine. 5 minutes. No. In person. Tonight. Same cafe. 7 o'clock. Julian, I don't think that's a good idea. It wasn't a suggestion, Elena, he interrupted. I'll see you there. Elena arrived at the cafe just as the sun was setting, her face pale and drawn. Julian was already there, sitting in the same booth where they had first reconnected. She slid into the seat across from him, avoiding his gaze. What's this about? Julian leaned forward, his expression intense. I can't keep doing this, Elena. Sneaking around, waiting for you to figure out what you want. I need an answer. Her eyes darted to the table. I told you, it's not that simple. It is that simple, he snapped. Do you love him? She flinched at the question, her silence speaking louder than any words could. That's what I thought, Julian said, his voice softening slightly. So, why are you still with him? Why are you pretending? Elena finally looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Because it's not just about love, Julian. It's about stability, security. Leo is good to me. He's good for me. And I'm not. Julian asked, his voice breaking. I didn't say that, she whispered. Then what are you saying, Elena? That you'd rather be miserable but safe than take a chance on real happiness. She looked away, her silence unbearable. Julian exhaled sharply, leaning back in his seat. Fine. If you can't make a decision, I will. Her head snapped up. What does that mean? It means you have until the end of the week to leave Leo, he said, his tone resolute. If you don't, I'll tell him everything. The texts, the meetings, everything. Elena's face went pale. You wouldn't. Try me, Julian said coldly. I'm done waiting. He stood, throwing a few bills onto the table before walking out, leaving Elena staring after him, her heart pounding in her chest. That night, Elena lay awake in bed beside Leo, her mind racing. Julian's ultimatum had cornered her in a way she hadn't anticipated. On one side was the man she had once loved with every fiber of her being, the man who understood her in ways Leo never could. On the other was her husband, the man who offered her a life of stability and comfort, even if it lacked the fiery passion she felt with Julian. She didn't know what to do. And the clock was ticking. It started like any other evening. Elena was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone with that faint, unreadable smile she always wore lately. I stood in the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter, trying to steady my breathing. In my pocket was the undeniable proof of her betrayal, a screenshot of the message Amelia had intercepted earlier that day. See you at the cafe tomorrow, 6 p.m. Can't wait to talk. I had spent hours staring at those words, the confirmation of everything I had feared. She wasn't just keeping in touch with Julian. She was meeting him behind my back, under the guise of whatever excuses she thought I was gullible enough to believe. Enough was enough. I walked into the living room, my hands trembling, my heart pounding in my chest. Elena looked up, startled by my sudden presence. Hey, she said cautiously. What's up? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I sat across from her, pulling my phone from my pocket. My fingers felt heavy as I swiped to the screenshot and placed the phone on the table between us. What's this? I asked, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. Her face went pale as her eyes flicked to the screen. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then she tried to grab the phone, but I pulled it back before she could. Don't, I said sharply. Just explain. Leo, she stumbled over her words, her voice barely above a whisper. Who is Julian, Elena? I demanded, my tone harsher now. And why are you meeting him? She froze, her eyes filling with tears. It's not what you think. Don't insult my intelligence. I snapped. I've seen the messages. I've seen the photos. You've been meeting him, lying to me, betraying me. So, don't tell me it's not what I think. Just tell me the truth. Her tears spilled over as she buried her face in her hands. I didn't mean for it to happen, she sobbed. I swear, Leo, I didn't. Didn't mean for what to happen? I pressed. I've been talking to him, she admitted, ever since he came back. I didn't want to, but he kept reaching out, and you what? I missed him, okay? She cried, looking up at me, her face streaked with tears. I missed the way he made me feel. But it was just talking, that's all. Just talking. Just talking. I repeated, my voice dripping with disbelief. You expect me to believe that? You've been meeting him, Elena. Meeting him behind my back. That's not just talking. She broke down completely then, sobbing uncontrollably. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But I swear, Leo, it didn't go any further. I never wanted to hurt you. I sat back, staring at her as a wave of emotions crashed over me. Anger, betrayal, heartbreak. Then why did you do it? I asked, my voice quieter now. Why, Elena? What was I not giving you that you needed to go to him? She shook her head, her tears falling faster. It wasn't about you, she said. It was about me. I got scared, okay? Scared of settling, scared of losing a part of myself. Julian was a reminder of who I used to be. But I know now it was a mistake. A huge mistake. A mistake. I echoed. You call months of lying and sneaking around a mistake? Yes, she cried, because I don't want to lose you, Leo. I love you. I want us to work. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. Love? Do you even know what that means, Elena? Because it sure doesn't look like this. Please, she begged, reaching for my hand. Please, Leo. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. Just give me a chance. I pulled my hand away, standing abruptly. The room felt suffocating, her pleas ringing in my ears. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But how could I, when the trust that had once been the foundation of our relationship was now in ruins? I need time, I said, my voice cold. I can't make any promises right now, Elena. I need to figure out if this is even worth saving. Her sobs followed me as I walked out of the room, but I didn't look back. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sliver of clarity. Whether or not we had a future together was no longer in our hands. It was in mine. It had been a week since the confrontation, and I was still living in a fog of uncertainty. Elena had become a shadow of herself, hovering around the house with red-rimmed eyes and trembling apologies. I had stayed mostly silent, not because I was ready to forgive, but because I didn't know what forgiveness would even look like. Then Amelia called. Leo, I found something you need to know, she said, her voice sharp and urgent. Can we meet? Is it about Julian? I asked, already feeling the pit in my stomach deepen. Yes, and it's worse than we thought. We met at Amelia's office later that evening. She sat across from me, a thick folder on the desk between us. Her expression was grim, and for a moment, she just looked at me, as if deciding how much to say. Julian isn't just a guy from Elena's past, she began. He has a history with you, too. What are you talking about? I asked, leaning forward. Amelia opened the folder, sliding a few documents toward me. Does the name Vance Industries ring a bell? I froze. It did. Years ago, during a particularly competitive bid for a project at my company, Vance Industries had been one of the contenders. They'd lost the contract, and their company went under shortly after. At the time, I'd thought little of it. It was just business. Julian Vance, Amelia said, confirming my growing suspicion. He's the son of the man who owned that company. My mind raced, piecing together fragments of the past. Julian's father had been vocal about blaming my company for their downfall, accusing us of undercutting them and playing dirty to win the contract. I'd brushed it off as sour grapes, but apparently, the grudge had lingered. Julian blames you for his family's failure, Amelia continued. And he's been using Elena as part of a plan to get back at you. The words hit me like a freight train. You're saying this whole thing was intentional? She nodded. At first, Julian probably just wanted to reconnect with Elena. But once he realized she was married to you, he saw an opportunity. He's been manipulating her, Leo, using her feelings to destabilize your marriage. I sat back, my head spinning. The betrayal felt layered now, more insidious than I had imagined. Does Elena know? I asked. Amelia shook her head. Not yet, but I think you should be the one to tell her. That night, I waited for Elena to come home. She had gone to visit her sister, Ava, likely seeking solace from someone who wouldn't judge her. When she walked through the door, her face lit up with cautious hope. Leo, she began, but I held up a hand to stop her. We need to talk, I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. She sat across from me at the dining table, her hands fidgeting nervously. I spoke to Amelia, I said. She found out something about Julian. Her eyes widened, and she opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. He's been using you, Elena. He doesn't care about you. All he wanted was to get back at me. She froze, her expression shifting from confusion to disbelief. What are you talking about? I laid it all out for her. The history between Julian's family and my company, his father's grudge, and Julian's calculated attempts to destroy my reputation through her. As I spoke, I saw the color drain from her face. When I finished, she stared at me, her eyes filled with tears. No, she whispered. He wouldn't. He couldn't. Elena, I said, my voice softening despite my anger. He did. He manipulated you, played on your emotions. He used your relationship to get to me. Her head dropped into her hands, and she let out a shaky sob. I'm so stupid, she said. How could I let this happen? I didn't answer. There was nothing I could say that would make her feel worse than she already did. After a long silence, she looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. I was naive, she said. I thought he loved me. But he was just using you. I finished for her. She nodded, her shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. I'm so sorry, Leo. I didn't see it. I didn't want to see it. For the first time, I saw genuine remorse in her eyes. It didn't erase the damage that had been done, but it was a start. Elena, I said, my voice firm but not unkind. You need to make a choice. No more excuses, no more hiding. You need to decide who you're going to be moving forward. She nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. I want to fix this, she said. I want to fix us. But I know it's going to take time. Time. It was the one thing we both needed. But as I walked away that night, leaving her alone at the table, I wasn't sure if time would be enough to heal the scars Julian had left behind. I sat alone in the living room, the faint hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the otherwise silent house. The envelope containing the divorce papers rested on the coffee table, its presence as heavy as the decision I'd been avoiding for weeks. Elena was upstairs, likely crying herself to sleep again. That had become her routine lately. Tears, apologies, and promises that she would do anything to fix what she had broken. And I believed her. I believed her remorse was real. But was remorse enough? In the days following Amelia's revelation about Julian's motives, Elena had been a shell of herself. She begged for forgiveness, swearing she had been blind to his manipulations. She deleted his number, blocked him on every platform, and even offered to go to therapy if that's what it would take. I love you, Leo, she said one night, her voice trembling. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'll spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of it. Her words haunted me. I knew she meant them, but they couldn't erase the months of deceit, the lies, the betrayal that had cut me deeper than I thought possible. Trust, I realized, wasn't something you could rebuild with words or even actions. It was like a fragile piece of glass. Once shattered, it could never truly be whole again. I thought about the man I had been before all of this. Optimistic, confident, eager to start a life with the woman I loved. That version of me felt like a distant memory now, replaced by someone more cynical, more guarded. And then there was the question I couldn't escape. If I stayed, would I ever be able to let go of the anger, the doubt, the constant suspicion? Could I live the rest of my life wondering if she might betray me again? The answer came to me, not as a sudden epiphany, but as a quiet, steady truth I could no longer deny. The next morning, I found Elena in the kitchen, clutching a mug of coffee like it was her lifeline. Her eyes were red, her face pale. She looked up as I entered, a flicker of hope flashing across her face. Leo, she began, her voice tentative. I sat down across from her, the envelope in my hand. We need to talk, I said, my tone calm but firm. Her eyes fell to the envelope, and I saw the realization dawn on her. Tears welled up almost instantly. I can't do this anymore, I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. I've thought about it from every angle, and I can't move past what happened. Too much has been broken. Please, she whispered, her voice cracking. I know I messed up, but I can make it right. I can. You can't, I interrupted gently. And it's not just about you. It's about me. I don't want to spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, wondering if I'll ever feel secure again. Her sobs filled the room, but I pressed on. I loved you, Elena. I still do, in some way. But love isn't enough. Not without trust. As I walked out of the house later that day, the papers signed and delivered, I felt a strange mix of grief and relief. Grief for the life we had dreamed of, for the future we had planned. Relief because for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. This wasn't the ending I had envisioned when I said, I do. But life rarely goes the way we expect. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that love alone can't sustain a relationship. It needs trust, respect, and honesty. Without those, love is just a house built on sand. Beautiful, maybe, but destined to collapse. As I drove away, the weight on my chest began to lift. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face it. Alone, but free.